If you're still using the same vocabulary as everyone else, you'll never get a Band 9. I know that sounds harsh, but it's true. After helping thousands of students improve their IELTS scores from 6 to Band 7+, I've seen exactly what separates top scorers from the rest. In this video, I'm giving you 100 advanced vocabulary words that can completely transform your speaking and writing. These are not random words from a textbook. These are words carefully chosen from real Band 9 answers, examiner reports, and top student submissions. I've added all 100 words in a free PDF and extra materials for you. Just check the links in the description. But don't just download and go, because I'm not just giving you the words. I'm showing you exactly how to use them in a way that impresses IELTS examiners and boosts your score. So stay with me. This part is where the real value is. What makes Band 9 vocabulary different? What words should you never use? And can learning just 100 words really give you a competitive edge? Stick with me, because by the end of this video, you won't just know these words, you'll know how to use them naturally and confidently in your next IELTS test. 1. Rapport. To have rapport means to have a good understanding with someone and the ability to communicate with them, often implying mutual trust and affinity. For example, the therapist quickly established a strong rapport with her new client, fostering trust and open communication. 2. Inquisitive. This adjective describes someone wanting to discover as much as you can about things, sometimes in a way that annoys people. It implies curiosity. For example, the inquisitive student always asked insightful questions, eager to deepen her understanding of the subject. 3. Studious. This adjective describes someone who likes to spend a lot of time studying. It implies dedication to academic pursuits. For example, her studious nature allowed her to excel in all her academic pursuits. 4. Generation gap. This refers to a lack of understanding between older and younger people that results from different life experiences. It highlights differences in values or perspectives. For example, the rapid pace of technological change often contributes to a generation gap in digital literacy. 5. Sedentary. This adjective describes a lifestyle or activity involving little exercise or physical activity, usually sitting down. It's often associated with health concerns. For example, a sedentary lifestyle can lead to various health problems, including obesity and heart disease. 6. Balanced diet. A balanced diet is one consisting of a variety of different types of food and providing adequate amounts of nutrients necessary for good health. It's fundamental for well-being. For example, maintaining a balanced diet is crucial for overall health and energy levels. 7. Face, verb. As a verb, to face means to deal with a difficult situation. It implies confronting a challenge directly. For example, the team had to face significant challenges during the product development phase. 8. Close-knit. This adjective describes groups of people in which everyone supports each other, implying strong bonds and community. For example, the small community was very close-knit, with neighbors always ready to help one another. 9. Amenities. Amenities are structures or features intended to make life more pleasant or comfortable for people, often found in residential or commercial properties. For example, the new apartment complex boasts a wide range of amenities, including a gym and a swimming pool. 10. Residential. This adjective relates to houses where people live rather than places where they work. It defines an area's primary purpose. For example, the city council approved the zoning change to allow for more residential development in the area. 11. Residents. Residents are people who live in a home or in an area. This term is commonly used in urban planning and community discussions. For example, the new policy was met with mixed reactions from the local residents. 12. Densely. This adverb means with a lot of things close together. It describes concentration or compactness. For example, the urban park was densely populated with trees, providing ample shade. 13. Dense. This adjective means tightly packed or having a lot of material in a small space. It is the adjective form of densely. For example, the forest was so dense that sunlight barely reached the ground. 14. Outskirts. The outskirts refer to the area that forms on the edge of a city or town. It implies a location just outside the main urban center. For example, they decided to buy a house on the outskirts of the city to enjoy a quieter lifestyle. 15. Affordable. This adjective describes something that is not expensive or within one's financial means. It's a key term in discussions about housing, healthcare, and education. For example, the government is working to ensure that housing remains affordable for all citizens. 16. Endangered. This adjective describes something in danger of being harmed, lost, or not existing, commonly used for species facing extinction. For example, conservation efforts are crucial to protect endangered species from extinction. 17. Congestion. Congestion is a situation in which there is too much traffic and movement is difficult. It's a common problem in urban areas. For example, traffic congestion is a major problem in many large cities during peak hours. 18. Congested. This adjective means overcrowded, especially with traffic or people. It is the adjective form of congestion. For example, the city center becomes heavily congested during the holiday shopping season. 19. Culture shock. Culture shock is a feeling of confusion, difficulty, or nervousness that you get when you're in a new place and do not understand the way people there behave. It's common for international travelers. For example, moving to a completely different country can often lead to a significant culture shock. 20. Overwhelmed. This adjective describes having too much to deal with. It implies a feeling of being swamped or overcome. For example, she felt overwhelmed by the sheer volume of work she had to complete before the deadline. 21. Overwhelming. This adjective describes something causing someone to feel overwhelmed. It is the adjective form of overwhelmed. For example, the support from the community was overwhelming, far exceeding their expectations. 22. Enable to enable means to make someone able to do something or make something possible. It implies providing the means or opportunity. For example, technology can enable remote teams to collaborate effectively across different time zones. 23. Imply to imply means to suggest something without saying it directly. It's about conveying a message indirectly. For example, his silence seemed to imply that he disagreed with the proposal. 24. Engender. To engender means to cause something to happen or develop. It often refers to creating a feeling or situation. For example, the new policy is expected to engender greater trust between the public and the government. 25. Culminate in. This phrase means to result in something, often a final or decisive outcome after a period of development. For example, years of hard work and dedication culminated in her winning the national championship. 26. Admittedly. This adverb is used when you are admitting that something is true, often to concede a point or acknowledge a difficulty. For example, admittedly, the project faced some initial setbacks, but we managed to overcome them. 27. Off the top of my head. This idiom means saying the first idea that comes to mind without much thought or deep consideration. For example, off the top of my head, I'd say the main challenge is securing sufficient funding. 28. Gather my thoughts. This phrase means to take a moment to think and organize one's ideas before speaking. It's a useful delaying tactic in conversations. For example, please give me a minute to gather my thoughts before I present my findings. 29. Come up with. This phrasal verb means to generate or think of something, usually an idea, solution, or plan. For example, the team needs to come up with a creative solution to the marketing problem. 30. Point out. This phrasal verb means to highlight or clarify something, often drawing attention to a specific detail or fact. For example, she was quick to point out the inconsistencies in the report's data. 31. It all comes down to. This phrase summarizes a point and focuses on the key or most fundamental aspect of something. For example, ultimately, it all comes down to effective communication and teamwork. 32. Likewise. This adverb means similarly or in the same way. It's used to show agreement or parallel action. For example, the first speaker presented a compelling argument, and the second speaker spoke likewise. 33. Furthermore. This adverb means in addition, besides. It's used to introduce an additional point that supports or expands on what has just been said. For example, the research showed significant benefits. Furthermore, it highlighted areas for future study. 34. Moreover, this adverb also means in addition, besides. It's similar to furthermore and is used to add extra information or emphasize a point. For example, the new software is user-friendly. Moreover, it offers advanced features for professionals. 35. Conversely. This adverb is used to introduce a statement that is opposite to one you have just made. It signals a contrasting idea. For example, some studies suggest that exercise boosts mood. Conversely, a lack of physical activity can lead to feelings of lethargy. 36. Evidence for this appears in this phrase is used to introduce an example or supporting data for a claim. It lends credibility to an argument. For example, evidence for this appears in the latest economic report, which shows a steady increase in consumer spending. 37. A good illustration of this phrase is used to introduce an example that clearly demonstrates a point or concept. For example, a good illustration of this is the company's recent success in expanding into new international markets. 38. Impaired. This adjective describes something weakened or damaged. It's often used in medical or functional contexts. For example, his vision was impaired after the accident, making it difficult to read. 39. Inadvertently. This adverb means done unintentionally or accidentally. It implies an action without conscious intent. For example, she inadvertently deleted the important file while cleaning up her computer. 40. Initially. This adverb means at the beginning. It refers to the starting point of a process or situation. For example, initially, the project seemed straightforward, but it quickly became more complex. 41. Inevitable. This adjective describes something certain to happen and impossible to avoid. It implies a sense of destiny or certainty. For example, given the current trends, a shift towards renewable energy sources seems inevitable. 42. Insert. To insert means to put something into something else. It's a common verb in technical and everyday contexts. For example, please insert the USB drive into the port to transfer the data. 43. Interpersonal. This adjective refers to interactions or relationships between people. It's crucial in fields like psychology and management. For example, strong interpersonal skills are vital for effective leadership and team collaboration. 44. Label. Verb. As a verb, to label means to attach a name or description to something, often categorizing it. For example, it's important not to label people based on stereotypes. 45. Literacy. Literacy is the ability to read and write. It's a fundamental skill for education and participation in society. For example, promoting literacy is a key goal for many educational programs worldwide. 46. Menace. A menace is a threat or danger. It implies something that poses a risk or annoyance. For example, the spread of misinformation can be a serious menace to public discourse. 47. Millennium. A millennium is a period of 1,000 years. It's used for long historical spans. For example, humanity has made tremendous progress over the past millennium. 48. Modification. A modification is a change, usually to make something work better or to adapt it. For example, the software underwent several modifications to improve its performance and user interface. 49. Pattern. A pattern is a repeated design or a particular way in which something is often done or repeated. It implies predictability or regularity. For example, researchers observed a clear pattern in consumer behavior during the holiday season. 50. Perceive to perceive means to interpret or regard someone or something in a particular way. To become aware of something or someone by using the senses. For example, how people perceive a brand can significantly influence its market success. 51. Predate. To predate means to exist or occur before something else. It establishes a chronological relationship. For example, many ancient civilizations predate written history, leaving behind only archaeological evidence. 52. Predecessors. Predecessors are people or things that came before others, often in a position or role. For example, the current CEO built upon the strong foundation laid by her predecessors. 53. Predominantly. This adverb means mostly or mainly. It indicates the prevailing characteristic or majority. For example, the audience for the concert was predominantly young adults. 54. Prominence. Prominence is the state of being important or well known. It implies high visibility or significance. For example, the issue of climate change has gained increasing prominence in global discussions. 55. Possess to possess means to own or have something, often referring to qualities, skills, or attributes. For example, to succeed in this role, you must possess strong analytical skills. 56. Remedy. A remedy is a solution or treatment for a problem. It implies a corrective measure. For example, the government is seeking a long-term remedy for the housing crisis. 57. Reside to reside means to live or stay in a particular place. It's a more formal term for live. For example, many international students reside in university dormitories during their studies. 58. Retaliation. Retaliation means taking action in response to an attack or harm. An act of revenge. For example, the company warned against any form of retaliation against employees who reported misconduct. 59. Robust. This adjective describes something strong and healthy, often used for systems, economies, or physical conditions. For example, the economy showed robust growth in the last quarter, indicating a strong recovery. 60. Route. A route is a path or a course to get from one place to another. It refers to a planned or established way. For example, the GPS suggested the quickest route to our destination, avoiding heavy traffic. 61. Rotation. Rotation is the act of turning around a central point or a regular sequence of changes. For example, crop rotation is an agricultural practice that helps maintain soil fertility. 62. Settlers. Settlers are people who move to a new place and create a new community in that place. This term is often used in historical contexts. For example, the early settlers faced numerous hardships as they established new towns. 63. Subsequent. This adjective describes something happening after or something else. It indicates a sequence of events. For example, the initial findings were promising, and subsequent studies confirmed the results. 64. Substantially. This adverb means significant or a considerable in amount or degree. It implies a large or noticeable change. For example, the new policy is expected to substantially reduce carbon emissions. 65. Sustain. To sustain means to support or maintain something over time. It implies keeping something going or in existence. For example, it is challenging to sustain high levels of productivity without adequate rest. 66. Sustainable. This adjective describes something able to be maintained at a certain rate or level. It is the adjective form of sustain, often used in environmental contexts. For example, developing sustainable energy sources is crucial for the future of our planet. 67. Steady. This adjective describes something stable and not likely to change suddenly. It implies consistency and reliability. For example, the company has experienced steady growth over the past 5 years. 68. Sufficient. This adjective means enough to meet the needs or requirements. It implies adequacy. For example, we have sufficient resources to complete the project on time. 69. Tag, verb. As a verb, to tag means to attach a label to something or to identify someone in a photo or post. For example, social media platforms allow users to tag friends in photos. 70. Tremendous. This adjective describes something extremely good or very large, great, or strong. It conveys a sense of awe or magnitude. For example, the team showed tremendous effort in overcoming the obstacles. 71. Utility. Utility refers to the usefulness of something. It's often used in economics or when discussing the practical value of an item. For example, the utility of this new software lies in its ability to streamline complex workflows. 72. Venue. A venue is a location where an event or activity takes place. It's a common term for event planning. For example, the concert venue was packed with enthusiastic fans. 73. Warrant. To warrant means to make something necessary or appropriate. It implies justification for an action. For example, the severity of the situation might warrant immediate action. 74. Proponent. A proponent is a person who argues for a cause or proposes an idea, someone who is in favor of something. For example, she is a strong proponent of renewable energy and environmental protection. 75. Solely. This adverb means only or exclusively. It emphasizes singularity. For example, the decision was based solely on the evidence presented, without personal bias. 76. Abundant. This adjective describes something present in large quantities. It implies plentifulness. For example, the region is abundant in natural resources, including minerals and forests. 77. Roughly. This adverb means approximately, about. It indicates an estimation rather than an exact figure. For example, the project is expected to take roughly 6 months to complete. 78. Conquer. To conquer means to defeat someone or something, usually by force. It implies overcoming a challenge or adversary. For example, the explorer aimed to conquer the highest peak in the mountain range. 79. Vulnerable. This adjective describes someone or something easily hurt, influenced, or attacked. It implies a lack of protection. For example, children are often more vulnerable to the effects of online misinformation. 80. Taxonomy. Taxonomy is a system for naming and organizing things into groups that share similar qualities. It's used in biology and other classification systems. For example, biologists use taxonomy to classify and understand the relationships between different species. 81. Debris. Debris refers to trash that is scattered around after a disaster or destruction. For example, after the storm, the streets were covered in debris from fallen trees and damaged buildings. 82. Sustainability. Sustainability is the ability of something to last over time, especially in terms of environmental or economic systems. For example, corporate sustainability initiatives aim to balance economic growth with environmental protection. 83. Amateur. An amateur is a person who does something for pleasure, not for money. It contrasts with professional. For example, he started as an amateur photographer before turning his hobby into a professional career. 84. Foster. To foster means to encourage the development or growth of something. It implies nurturing or promoting. For example, the program aims to foster a love of reading among young children. 85. Deploy. To deploy means to bring something into effective action, to use, utilize, employ, or exploit. It's often used for resources or strategies. For example, the company plans to deploy new software updates to all its users next month. 86. Tackle. Verb. As a verb, to tackle means to make a determined effort to deal with a problem or a difficult task. For example, the government is determined to tackle the issue of rising unemployment. 87. Redundant. This adjective describes something no longer needed or useful, often because something newer or more efficient exists. For example, with the automation of many tasks, some manual roles have become redundant. 88. Apparently, this adverb means evidently or obviously, or as far as one knows or can see. It often implies something is widely believed, but not necessarily confirmed. For example, apparently the new restaurant is very popular, as there's always a long queue. 89. Contaminate. To contaminate means to make poisonous or impure, to pollute. It implies introducing harmful substances. For example, chemicals from the factory could contaminate the local water supply. 90. Contamination. Contamination is pollution, or the act of making something impure. It is the noun form of contaminate. For example, strict measures were put in place to prevent contamination of the sterile environment. 91. Steer away from steer clear of. These phrases mean to avoid something or someone. They imply deliberate avoidance. For example, it's advisable to steer clear of unreliable sources of information. 92. Otherwise. This adverb is used after a command or a suggestion to show what the result will be if you don't follow an idea. It can also mean differently or in another way. For example, you need to submit the report by Friday. Otherwise, it won't be reviewed. 93. Assess. To assess means to evaluate or estimate the nature, ability, or quality of something. For example, the committee will assess the proposals based on their feasibility and impact. 94. Compile. To compile means to gather information from different sources and put it together, often into a list or report. For example, she spent hours to compile the data for her research paper. 95. Property can refer to something that you own or have, or a quality of a substance or material. For example, the building's unique property is its ability to withstand extreme temperatures. 96. Generate. To generate means to produce or create something, often used in the context of energy, ideas, or income. For example, the new marketing campaign aims to generate more leads for the sales team. 97. Threat. A threat is a person or thing likely to cause damage or danger. It implies a potential for harm. For example, climate change poses a significant threat to global ecosystems. 98. Target is something to shoot at, either real or figurative. As a verb, to target means to aim for something. For example, the company's main target for the next quarter is to increase market share. 99. Vigorous. This adjective describes something strong, healthy, and full of energy. It implies intensity and robustness. For example, the debate was characterized by a vigorous exchange of ideas. 100. Guidelines. Guidelines are general rules, principles, or pieces of advice that provide direction. For example, all employees must adhere to the company's ethical guidelines.